Yeah, I love it. And I mean, honestly, it's a good break for me from the shop because, it's just been me doing everything in that shop.
What if the cheerful treasure hunter you loved was hiding a much deeper story? Mary Padian became famous on Storage Wars for her bright smile, sharp eye, and exciting finds. On screen, she looked full of life, always chasing hidden treasures and big wins. But was everything really as perfect as it seemed? Behind the screen were quiet struggles and emotional moments no one saw. This is more than fame. It's a story of truth, challenges, and strength. Let's uncover all the heartbreaking tragedies of Mary Padian. 2 days away from losing everything. Most people think the show made Mary Padian. What they do not know is that she was already on the edge of total failure before the show ever arrived. After moving back to Texas from New York, Mary opened Mary's Finds, a small shop selling vintage items, upcycled furniture, and old things she turned into something useful. She poured everything into it, her time, her money, her energy. She had no backup plan. This shop was it. It did not work. The money was not coming in the way she needed it to. Month after month, she was running a business that was bleeding more than it was earning. She held on as long as she could. Then she made the decision most small business owners dread. She decided to close the shop. It was over. She was done. 2 days after making that decision, a woman walked in. She looked around the shop, asked if everything belonged to Mary, then left. She came back the next day and revealed she was a producer for Storage Wars, Texas. She wanted Mary to film a how-to video for the show's website. Mary said yes, not knowing that it was actually her audition. The producer saw everything she needed in those few minutes inside that struggling shop. Mary herself later admitted she had no idea she was being considered for television. She said that if the producer had directly asked her to be on a reality show, she would have laughed and said no. The fact that it happened the way it did was purely unplanned. If that producer had walked in 3 days later, the shop would have been empty. There would have been no show, no national fan base, nothing. That is how close she came to complete collapse. 48 hours separated her from a life in which none of the things she became known for ever happened. But the financial stress of those years did not start with the shop. It started much earlier. When Mary first moved to New York City, after graduating from the University of Texas in 2003, she had a degree in photojournalism and very little else. Her first year in that city was rough. She floated between jobs, looking for a steady income in one of the most expensive cities in the world, with no connections and no guarantee of anything. Nobody talks about that version of Mary, the one who was broke and unknown in New York, trying to figure out how to survive. She eventually landed the job at Architectural Digest. But even that stability did not last forever. She had been working there for years under editor-in-chief Paige Rentz, one of the most respected names in design publishing. Rentz was not just her boss. She was the reason the job felt worth doing. Working under someone who is genuinely great at what they do makes a real difference. Then in 2010, Rentz retired. The person who had anchored Mary's experience at that magazine was gone. That retirement was one of the reasons Mary left New York and went back to Texas. So, piece by piece, everything she had tried to build kept slipping. The New York career lost its anchor. The return to Texas brought financial struggle. The shop she built from scratch came within 2 days of permanent closure. 3 separate attempts at stability, and all 3 failed badly before anything solid came from them. The hard part about this kind of repeated near failure is that it takes something out of you psychologically. When you keep building things, and they keep almost collapsing, you start to wonder if you are doing something wrong. You start to doubt your instincts. You work harder to compensate for the doubt. And you carry all of that silently because the public version of your story does not have room for the messy middle parts. By the time the show found her, Mary had already been through more failure and financial pressure than most people realize. The fun, confident woman on the show was real, but she was also someone who had nearly lost everything more than once before the cameras turned on. Also, the collapse she almost experienced at the shop was not her only major personal loss. Family troubles also added up. A broken family. In 2009, Mary Padian's parents divorced. Her father, John, and her mother, Teresa, ended their marriage after years together. This happened right in the middle of one of the most unstable periods of Mary's life. She had left New York. She was back in Texas. She was trying to build a business from scratch, with no guaranteed income, and at the same time, the family unit she had grown up with was breaking apart permanently. When you think about Mary Padian, it's easy to assume that, as an adult, things like family changes wouldn't affect her as much. But that's not true. When her parents divorced, it didn't just feel like their separation. It changed her whole sense of family. The home she knew felt different. Everything shifted in ways no one really prepared her for. It's not just about two people splitting up. She ended up grieving the family as a whole. And for Mary, that emotional weight was something she carried quietly behind the scenes. Aside from all these, Mary, she has always spoken warmly about her family in public. She is close to her brother Luke. She is an aunt to his daughter Lily, and posts about her with real affection. Her extended family is large, with over 40 cousins. Family clearly matters to her deeply, which is exactly why the divorce would have landed hard. When something matters that much to you, and it breaks, the pain is unbreakable. There is also the specific weight of watching her parents divorce when she was trying to go through a romantic failure. Mary had just come out of a serious breakup that had sent her from New York back home during this period. She was already dealing with a lot of emotional hurt at this point. When you look at Mary Padian, you see someone full of life, always smiling on the show. But what many people don't realize is that she went through a very confusing and emotional time. Imagine how heavy that feels. Her own relationship made her question herself, and her parents' separation made her question what love and long-term commitment really mean. Going through both at once is not easy for anyone. And for Mary, it was a lot to carry behind the scenes. None of this made it onto the show. The show had no interest in showing the audience a woman processing family breakdown and personal loss while trying to keep a struggling business alive. It wanted the treasure hunts, the bidding, the funny moments. So that is what it showed. The version of Mary on television was real, but it was also heavily edited. There is something else worth noting about how much family meant to Mary and how it shaped her. Her father, John, worked in scrap metal. He ran a salvage and recycling business his whole life. That is actually where Mary's eye for discarded things came from. Growing up around a junkyard, watching her father see value in things other people threw away, shaped the way she looked at the world. Her career, in a very direct way, grew out of her father's work. So the breakdown of her parents' marriage was not just the loss of family stability. It was also a complicated personal battle with the person who had unknowingly given her the foundation of everything she would become professionally. She rebuilt herself through all of it, but the coincidence of timing, the divorce, the breakup, the failing business, all happening within the same short window, is something nobody has ever properly acknowledged when talking about her life. And even after she made it onto the show and found a new level of success, the personal pain did not stop. Because one of the biggest tragedies of her time on the show had nothing to do with business or family. It had to do with something she let the entire country watch. Love life. Gone in 3 months. In May of 2016, during Season 9, Mary Padian did something she had never done before and has never done the same way since. She brought her boyfriend to an auction and introduced him on camera. His name was Dylan. She called him her perfect man. She told viewers she had been looking for love since moving to California and had found it back in Texas. She was smiling. She seemed completely certain. The audience loved it. Finally, after years of speculation about her love life, they were getting a real answer. 3 months later, Dylan was gone. She never made an announcement. She never explained what happened. In a July 2016 interview, she was asked about her love life and answered in a way that quietly made it clear she was single again. People who were paying attention picked up on it. She moved on and said nothing more. Think about what Mary Padian actually went through. She stood in front of millions on the show, introduced a man as her perfect partner, and let cameras follow their relationship. Then it ended, but the show still aired. While viewers were watching her talk about how happy she was, that relationship was already over. There was no private space to process it. It was public, recorded, and replayed. Anyone could go back and watch a moment that no longer reflected her reality. The embarrassment is real, but the heartbreak underneath it is worse. What makes this heavier is the pattern. The breakup in New York that sent her running back to Texas in the first place was serious enough to uproot her entire life. That was not casual either. She had now experienced 2 significant relationships ending badly. One before her career began and one in the middle of it. Both times, she had believed in what she had. Both times, it collapsed. At 45 years old today, Mary Padian has never been married. She has never been engaged. She has no children. She once said publicly that her dream was to find her perfect man and eventually have children with him. She has been saying some version of that for years. It has not happened. That dream, the one she talked about openly on camera and in interviews, has not come true. At her age, the window for having biological children is unfortunately closed or about to. That is a loss she is living with right now, not in the past. She has been spotted recently with a man named Pierce in Austin. She posted photos casually, no announcement, no declaration, just a quiet mention in a caption. That is what changed after Dylan. She stopped declaring anything. She stopped letting the cameras or the public anywhere near her relationships. She learned that lesson the hard way, and it cost her more than 3 months of her life. The irony is that the same openness and warmth that made her so likable on television was the exact quality that made the Dylan situation so painful. She was genuine. She was excited. She shared something real, and reality television rewarded her for that authenticity and then left her to deal with the fallout privately. She has also spent years being publicly questioned about why she is not in a relationship. The constant online speculation about what is wrong with her, why someone like her is single, with many sounding as if her singleness is evidence of a flaw rather than a combination of hard circumstances and personal choices. She has had to absorb that narrative while knowing the actual truth about how much she has already been through with relationships. But the losses in her personal life were only part of the picture. Because the show she spent years building her identity around had a secret underneath it that changed the meaning of everything she had given to it. A trusted show exposed as partially built on lies. In 2012, original cast member Dave Hester was fired from the show. He did not go quietly. He filed a wrongful termination lawsuit against A&E and demanded $750,000 in damages. What came out in that lawsuit was damaging. Hester claimed the show's auctions were staged. He alleged that producers planted valuable items inside storage units to make the finds look more impressive than they actually were. He said the show paid for the bids of weaker cast members who did not have the money or skills to compete on their own. He also claimed that producers arranged for one of the female cast members to undergo surgery to make the show more attractive to viewers. Here is the part that matters most. A&E did not deny the core accusations. Instead of pushing back hard, their legal response cited First Amendment protections for creative content. That is not a denial. That is a network quietly admitting that what you see on screen is not entirely real while arguing they have the right to present it however they want. The lawsuit was eventually settled in 2014. Hester was brought back onto the show. The whole thing faded from headlines, but what it left behind does not fade. Mary Padian spent years on a show that was, at least in part, constructed. The finds she made, the bidding she participated in, the dramatic moments that made for good television, some portion of that was engineered by producers. She was performing within a framework that was not honest about how it worked. She gave real time to this. She moved from Texas to California for this show. She left her business, her family, her home state. She uprooted her life completely because she believed in what she was doing. And the foundation of what she was doing had cracks in it that nobody told her about openly. There is also the question of how this affects her legacy. She built her entire public identity around being a genuine treasure hunter. Her authenticity was the thing people loved about her. She was not pretending to like vintage things or pretending to have an eye for value. That was real. But the show she demonstrated it on was playing by rules she may not have been fully told about. That is a specific kind of betrayal that is hard to name but very real to experience. As for the spin-off, where she started, it was cancelled in 2014 after just 3 seasons. Her first television platform was cut from under her before she had fully established herself. She then got picked up for the main show, which felt like a rescue at the time. But the main show was the one with the lawsuit hanging over it, the one with the faking allegations, the one that A&E refused to properly deny, manipulating. She lost that show, too, eventually. She appeared in fewer and fewer episodes toward the later seasons and quietly exited without any public explanation. After everything she had gone through, what COVID then did to what remained of the business she had built makes all of it feel even more painful. A pandemic and her store. Mary's finds survived the breakup that started it. It survived the near closure before the show found it. It survived the cancellation of Storage Wars Texas. It survived her moving to California and trying to run it from a different state. It survived years of being a side project while she was filming a television show. It did not survive COVID. When the pandemic hit in 2020, she was forced to close the physical storefront of Mary's Finds permanently. Not temporarily, while things settled. Permanently. The shop that had started everything, that had been the reason a producer walked in and changed her life, that had been the foundation of her entire professional identity, closed its doors for the last time. She moved the business online and kept going. But closing a physical shop is a specific kind of loss. A physical shop has a presence. People walk past it and stop. People touch things, discover things they were not looking for. Regulars build a relationship with the space and with the person who runs it. The shop has a personality. You cannot move that personality to a website. What made Mary's Finds special was Mary herself walking you through it. The stories behind each piece, the way she talked about where something came from, and what it could become. That experience lived inside the physical space. When the space closed, that experience ended. The online store sells items. The physical shop sold an experience. Those are two different things. There is also the financial reality. She had already left the show by the time COVID hit. The show went on its indefinite break in 2019, and she had quietly moved back to Texas before that. So when the pandemic closed her store, she had no television income to fall back on. The platform was gone. The physical business was gone. As time went on, she moved to social media brand deals and influencer content to supplement the income. That is not a choice born out of ambition. That is survival. When your primary source of income disappears, you do whatever keeps things moving. She kept things moving. But rebuilding income as an influencer in your 40s, after a decade as a reality television personality, when your core audience remembers you from a show that no longer airs, is not easy work. Aside from that, she has dedicated real time to Ubuntu Life, a charity supporting women in Kenya by employing handmade goods. It also runs a clinic for children with neurological conditions. The humanitarian commitment is genuine, but spending time on charitable work while also trying to keep a business alive and rebuild an income stream after a pandemic is a heavy weight to carry. Her net worth today is estimated at somewhere between $600,000 and $800,000. For someone who was a main cast member on a hit A&E show for close to a decade, that number is low. The show reportedly paid her around $450,000 per season at her peak. But seasons of reality television do not come every year. There are long gaps, uncertain renewals, and no guarantees. What looks like a large number per season spreads thin across the years between seasons, especially when you are also running a physical business with overhead costs and then rebuilding from scratch after a pandemic. She has rebuilt again. She always rebuilds. But 4 times starting over is 4 times too many for someone who works as hard as she clearly does. And none of those rebuilds prepared her for what happened in April of 2026. A major loss. On April 22, 2026, Daryl Sheets was found lifeless at his home in Lake Havasu City, Arizona. He was 67 years old. Police confirmed he passed on from self-harm, the head. Daryl Sheets was not just a name from Mary's past. He was one of the original cast members of the show. He had been on the show since the very beginning, years before Mary joined. When she came onto the main show in Season 5, he was already a veteran. He was part of the world she walked into. He was part of what made that show feel like a real community, rather than just a job for Mary. She posted a tribute on her Instagram stories. She shared a photo of herself with Daryl and another person taken at a restaurant somewhere, a normal day, a regular moment. She wrote that some people become an unforgettable chapter of your life. She said he would be missed. Those are quiet words, but they come from someone who sat across auction yards from this man for years, who competed against him, laughed with him, and knew the version of him that existed behind the television persona, and losing that person in the worst possible way is not something easy to bear. What made his passing even harder to sit with was what fellow cast member Renee Nazoda said publicly in the days that followed. He stated in an Instagram video that he believed Daryl had been cyberbullied aggressively in the period before his passing. He said Daryl had been posting about a specific person tormenting him online relentlessly. Nazoda mentioned that he hoped law enforcement would look seriously into it. The Lake Havasu City Police Department confirmed to the media that cyberbullying accusations were part of the active investigation. The last public photo Daryl Sheets posted was of himself walking his dog. A normal moment. And then he was gone. For Mary and every other former cast member, this passing carries a deep pain, seeing how connected they were. Another layer of hurt Mary Padian had to bear is how her career has been misunderstood. Instead of being seen as someone building a niche around vintage sourcing and resale, she is sometimes reduced to just a television personality whose only relevance is what happens on screen. That ignores the business side of what she does and the consistency required to maintain visibility in a competitive space. There is also pressure that comes from being a long-running public figure. People expect consistency in image, personality, and life choices, even though real life does not work that way. Any change, whether in appearance, focus, or direction, gets questioned instead of understood as normal growth. At 45, she is still here, still running her online store, still posting on Instagram, still finding vintage things and turning them into something worth keeping, still carrying everything listed in the private part of her life that the public never gets to see. The tragedy of Mary Padian is not one big dramatic moment. It is a collection of quiet, compounding losses that happened mostly off-camera, kept mostly in private, survived mostly alone. And the fact that she is still standing after all of it says more about who she actually is than anything that ever aired on the show. Mary Padian never became the biggest name to come out of the show. Dave Hester had the villain energy. Daryl Sheets had the gambler persona. Brandy and Jared had a couple of dramas. Mary had something different. She had genuine joy. And that turned out to be the thing people remembered longest. As a show, Storage Wars is built on a simple idea. People bid on abandoned storage lockers, hoping to find valuable items inside. It looks like fast money, competition, and lucky discoveries. The show turns everyday storage spaces into moments of surprise and drama. Each episode centers on competition between bidders who only get a quick look at the outside of a locker before deciding how much to risk. Once the winning bid is made, they have a limited time to sort through everything inside and determine whether they made a profit or a loss. The appeal of the show comes from uncertainty. Every locker could contain valuable antiques, collectibles, or items with no real worth. That gamble creates tension between bidders, especially when experienced buyers recognize potential value faster than others. Different cast members bring different strategies. Some rely on instinct, others on resale knowledge or niche expertise. The editing builds drama around rivalries, bidding, and unexpected finds, turning ordinary storage spaces into moments of suspense. Over time, the show also became less about the lockers themselves and more about the personalities involved, with recurring cast members shaping the show's identity and long-term appeal. Behind that concept is a real group of people whose lives became public entertainment. One thing that made Mary stand out was her energy, her curiosity, and her eye for unusual items. She was mostly referred to as the junkster. While others focused on high-stakes bidding, she often brought a more creative approach, seeing value in objects others ignored. Over time, she became a recognizable face on the series. But reality TV has a side that is not often discussed. It takes real people and places them into edited moments that are replayed and reshaped for audiences. What viewers see is not a full life, but selected fragments designed for entertainment. For someone like Mary, that means her personality, choices, and even private life can become public discussion points far beyond what she ever intended. Being on a show like that means losing control over how you are seen. Every reaction, every relationship, every decision can be analyzed by strangers who only know you through short scenes. What makes it harder is that reality TV never truly ends for the people involved. Episodes remain online, but even at that, she proved you do not need to fake it to build a loyal audience. You just need to be real. Every time she walked into a storage unit, you believed she actually cared about what she was going to find. That was not editing. That was her. She also changed how people thought about junk. Before Mary, vintage hunting on television was mostly about big-ticket items and dollar amounts. She made people care about the story behind a broken chair or a dusty old sign. That shift was real, and she drove it. The show ran for 12 seasons. It left behind a cast of unforgettable personalities, but Mary was the one people kept searching for after it ended. Not because of drama, because they genuinely missed her presence on screen. That kind of connection does not come from a production team. It comes from a person who showed up authentically every single time. She lost a lot along the way, more than most people know. But she never let any of it make her bitter or closed off. She kept building, kept finding things worth saving, kept showing up. At 45, she is still running Mary's Finds online, still posting, still hunting. The cameras stopped, but the work never did. The show is over. The units are empty. But Mary Padian is still going. And for the people who watched her from the beginning, that means everything far beyond every heartbreaking tragedy she has gone through. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.